Hello and welcome. You are listening to the Investor Lab, and boy, you are in for a treat today. So as you know, this is the auditory epicenter for passionate people seeking a life of freedom, choice, and abundance. And you would know that my name is Goose. But joining me today was a very, very special guest. His name is Tristan Scifo, and he is a financial advisor. But before you go, ooh, rough, that's a bit dry. He is not like your average financial advisor. Let's just put it that way. And this conversation was deeply bedded in spirituality, identity, manifestation, love, all kinds of stuff. So the firm that he runs is called Purpose Advisory, and they help people to create whole life plans, which is not just focused on money. It's about focusing on creating the life that you not only want, but deserve, and actually putting that into action. So we covered all kinds of stuff in this episode. There was so much to unpack there. We covered, whether money is the key to happiness and how the role that it plays. We covered the philosophy of money. We even spoke about the fact that economy is the seed of all innovation and how that impacts personal relationships. We spoke about how money is a magnifier for your greatest and worst attributes. We spoke about, oh my God, I'm looking at my notes right now. I've scrawled pages of notes out of this, and we had so much fun. We went everywhere. It was like it was an intellectual acid trip that will give you the foundation of transforming from where you are now to where you want to be on a deep and meaningful level. So this episode's perfect for anyone, literally at any point in their journey, whether you have already achieved wealth in some way, or you're just starting that journey, or you're just questioning who you are, or questioning, is there more to life than what I've currently got right now? Then I know there's not even a shadow of a doubt in my mind that you are going to listen to this episode probably 3 or 4 times and be like, wow, I've just gone on one hell of a ride. I certainly enjoyed it, and I know that you will too. This is a real ripper, and it was an absolute treat to be able to spend this time having this level of high level conversation. And as I say, I know that you're going to absolutely get the most out of it. Now, if you actually do the thing that I just said and get a lot out of it, then I would love for you to please share this with somebody else who would also love to think at a higher level and to elevate their sense of purpose and fulfillment. Because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. This is all one big journey to finding our greater self. And if you want to help somebody else do that, then this is the episode to send them. And on top of that, if you could like, rate, review, share, comment, do all the good stuff, interact with this. If you can see this or hear this, then interact with this in a meaningful way to let us know that you care about us just as much as we care about you. It's an absolute pleasure being on this journey with you, and thank you so much for trusting me to be a part of this little piece of your life. It means a lot, and I don't take it lightly. So thanks again. You're the best, and I look forward to seeing you on the inside. Hey guys, welcome back to the Investor Lab. And joining me today, actually, before I even get to who's joining me today, I'm so excited about the conversation we're about to embark on. We're going to be digging into a whole paradigm of concepts around not just wealth, but also fulfillment and purpose. And it's an absolute delight to be welcoming to the show a very esteemed guest who runs a business called Purpose Advisory, and he's built a business basically helping people to build whole life plans that allow them to achieve greater levels of fulfillment, not just financially, but in many other ways. I'm super excited to have you here. Tristan Scifo, welcome to the Investor Lab.
Hey, Goose. I'm excited to be here. Flattered. Really looking forward to the chat.
Yeah, man. So look, let's get into it. I know a little bit about who you are, but the people listening to this show might not. Now, to put it simply, you're a financial advisor. Is that right?
Yeah, officially. That's where I began 2013. Originally, I was in training, so like leadership development for kids in schools. Found my way into business training, and then almost stumbled into financial advice. I did a bit of reflection one summer after getting the sack from a previous job. Thought, where are my skills best served? Just discovered financial advice and thought, oh, what a cool way to work with people on a heart level, but still use all my techie, nerdy abilities. And then, help them beyond their finances in their life, not knowing where that would take me, but that was kind of the beginning of the journey.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm just gonna put this out there. Financial advisors don't have the best reputation.
Yeah. Look, I agree.
Much like real estate professionals.
I think so.
Though, right?
I think you and I are probably evenly stacked in that sense. And I think financial advice is slightly ahead of the real estate industry in that we're kind of more trusted now than we were a few years ago, than you guys are now than a few years ago, if you know what I mean.
I would agree with that. Yep. Yeah, I think it's a really interesting thing, and I want to dig into that a little bit because when I first met you and first had a conversation with you, I was like, this guy does not seem like a financial advisor, much in the same way that when I started out on my real estate journey, I think I had a lot of people going, oh my God, what is going on here?
What is that?
Oh man, the amount of times that I'm like, you need to be wearing a suit. You can't call yourself Goose. What's with the mustache? And it's like, all right, guys, relax. So tell me, what actually inspired you to want to pursue financial advice, and what is it about that inspires you to help others? And how do you actually, because you've got a different perspective on how to apply financial advice in a greater sense, right? So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Okay, yeah, there's a few questions in that. But for the sake that what I do with my clients is effectively an extension of my own journey, it began for me clearly at 17. I had a picture in my mind of what I wanted to do in the world. I actually saw this really old school documentary called The Corporation. Did you ever see that?
No.
It's worth it. It's kind of like a bit against the machine of the beast of the West, like the corporations of this world are ruining our lives. And it paints this picture that if a corporation was truly a person, which in legal sense they're referred to as a person, then they would be a psychopath. Because they kind of have disregard for anything that's human, and they only really try and make money. And that was very much the tone. 2007, I think it was. Anyway, it was an eye opener. I was probably a bit more socialist at the time, more than I am now at least. And I felt at least tugged towards wanting to do something different, wanting to be a difference in the world. The desire to make that difference stemmed from my values, my faith, growing up, but there was something specific to it. I had this image of creating a new style of business, which was definitely very connected with community, very focused on your team being like a family, interacting with your clients as if they're also an extension of that family, and then having a primary objective of doing good in the world. At that point, I had no idea that B Corporation exists, or that there were various movements around the place who'd been doing this for decades. In fact, there's always been businesses who've been genuinely trying to help people primarily and also make a profit to help them get there. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. So what are your values? You said you wanted to create a business in line with your values. What are your values in a nutshell?
Yeah, my personal values, very much on growth and truth. They're probably the key things that come to mind. I think love and truth are inseparable sides of the same coin, but I probably spend my time looking at the truth side of the coin, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Definitely a sense of connectedness. I naturally probably withdraw from connection for various reasons from my upbringing. But I found that I thrive when I can have heartfelt, intimate, and authentic connection. Something I have to push myself for, but it's just the environment I thrive in. I think every human does as well. And then, like I'm a Christian, so my faith comes into it a lot. And for me, the best way to explain what my faith is, it's a desire to take my own responsibility for what I have, and then to emulate the characteristics of God on this earth, so that I can bring the kingdom of heaven into this world. Kingdom of heaven being all the things that are good, truth, love, peace, all the things that pretty much everyone would want to have manifest in my body, manifest in my mind, in my works, and then hopefully replicated into the world around me.
Yeah, totally. And I think that definition of God is in line with, I think, a broader definition of spirituality, connectedness, and oneness, and everything like that. So I resonate with that too. So, okay, that's great. So you wanted to create a business that was in line with those values, so that you could serve other people and love them with truth as much as possible. What's money got to do with it? Like, is money, like everyone talks about, everyone wants, and I'm sure a lot of people come to you to get financial advice because they're like, I want more money. I want to be happier. I want to be more successful, and I want to have a better life. And the key to that is more money. Is that right?
Look, at first it kind of is. Like I would say no in the past, but the truth is people come to me for that reason, and we talk about money the whole way through our interaction. So I can't lie and say that it's not. But deep down, there's a part of me that wants to believe it's not about money at all. What I've come to learn recently is that anything that we want to do in the world is a real testing point for what's in our heart or what's in the spirit, because the spirit and the tangible are totally interlinked. And you can't spend your whole life just in Zen mode thinking about like nirvana. It just doesn't do anything for the world. But you also can't live your whole life just making stuff all the time. You've got to be connected to something greater. And so in terms of me, like I use that word manifest, which is a pretty like a weird word, but for me, that's what the interaction's all about. It's about having a certain way of being in the way I live, and then making sure that it expresses itself in life. So for example, if I want to be generous, I believe it requires generosity in heart and mind. And that needs to not just manifest into how I spend my time with people. I think it needs to bleed into my finances. I could say the same thing about, in terms of assisting or caring for others, being able to help productively. You want to help in various ways of life. Now, I've got a few friends who, for example, want to donate their time, but they don't want to give their money because they don't think that money is such an important part of life, right? They're like, no, there's more meaningfulness. I want to use my money for simple stuff, and then I'll use my time for other things. I get that. I don't think there's a bad point in that, but I just think there's more. I think that the way our world works, this is more a bit of philosophy, right? The world is highly pinged upon the financial system, the monetary system. And if you got to understand the history of it to understand why. Back before like even mainstream barter took place, all you really had was yourself and your skills and maybe your family or clan. Then as barter started to take place, there became a marketplace where you can exchange your skills for other things. And all of a sudden you can access way more. This is before most technology existed. The economy actually gave rise to almost all innovation and invention that we have. So it's an incredible gift that we have. Obviously, it's got its ills and its challenges, but we've worked on them and we've improved the monetary system to the point where now I would say it's an incredible tool that almost anyone has access to. Even people born into poverty have the ability, in most cases, to work their way through that, get on top of their situation, and more importantly, wield influence over all the rest of the people in the world through the monetary system. I think some of the ramifications of that in the present are that most connection in our communities relies upon finances. So for example, when you need something, rather than having to build a friendship with the person next door and ask for their lawnmower, you'll probably hop online and find an app that is sort of designed to share a lawnmower across the street. You don't even have to meet the guy that owns it. You just pay a fee and you get access to that lawnmower. So instead of trading a relationship for assets or goods, we're now trading finances for goods in almost every sense. There's almost nothing you can't pay for, obviously.
Do you think that's a good or a bad thing though? Because there's a couple of things to unpack there. I quite enjoyed that, but the economics or the economy is the seed of innovation. I'd agree with that, and that money is essentially what fuels pretty much all of our interaction. But do you think that has become a bad thing, or do you think that is in essence good because it will fuel not only innovation in economy and industry and everything, but innovation in spirit and innovation in connectedness as well? Do you think it has the potential to corrode our human self or to enhance it?
Both, for sure, both. I wouldn't know how to pin it good or bad. My disposition looks for the good, so I'd say it's good, but someone else's disposition could see the ills. Because it's just a tool. It's like a knife. Is a knife a good or a bad thing? Like put it in the hands of a chef, it's an amazing thing. Put it in the hands of a murderer, or you don't want to be near that person, right? It's a bit like money in that sense. Money is neutral. It's charge neutral, but it's way more amplified now. So for example, anyone our age, people who come to see me, they have to be very intentional to build community. If we're not focusing on our relationships and also community interactions on a regular basis, like each year I do a mentoring map. I work out who in my life is a peer, who's like a peer mentor, who am I investing into, who's like a legitimate mentor, and who's someone that I'm like just very focusedly trying to nurture and grow, not just my kids, but people in the world. And if I'm missing parts of my life where I have those types of relationships, both peers, mentors, and people I mentor, then I'm going to be lacking wealth and kind of that connection I was talking about in my world. And very few people that I share that model with of my clients have ever thought about really auditing or planning their relationships. The more extroverted, gregarious types will probably do it naturally in the places they're comfortable. And then the more introverted types probably don't do it very much. But none of us do it very intentionally. And that's a shame because, as I said, the financial world means we don't really need that relationship like we used to. I'm a firm believer that the reason marriage or divorce rates are increasing so much is because you don't need to be together anymore. Like the whole economy is built for an individual to exist, which is kind of nice. Like as I said, I'm an optimist, so I love the freedom of that. I love that it means you can do what you like. But I believe there are still timeless traditional values that are worth pursuing. And I think they're consistent for every human. And once you recognize that, you then have to work really hard to make sure you can reap the benefits of this beautiful financial model, but then not disregard the more important things as well.
Yeah, totally. I totally. I would also go as far as to say that I think you said that money is essentially neutrally charged, and but I would actually say that it's a magnifier.
Right.
You know, it will absolutely, it'll magnify. If you're a bad person, it'll magnify that. If you're disrespectful of money, that'll get amplified whenever you get it, and all of that kind of stuff as well. So how do you wind this in with, like, you spoke then about, you know, creating a map and a plan of you know, relationships, how they relate to money, peers, all of that kind of stuff. You're essentially talking about creating a whole life plan. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely. Because money amplifies everything in your life. Like, you give a relatively nice person a lot of money, and not only will they get the media's attention on them, it's sadly the case these days, but any elements of their character which are flawed or are struggling are going to amplify. And you see this oftentimes when people who've never had wealth and typically have a pretty average character suddenly win a lottery or something like that. It can kill them, man. That money can blow up their deepest insecurities, their addictions, and they can just go dark roads. And that's kind of an extreme case, but we see it all the time. So to your question, I see money as both a doorway into people's hearts, but then also it's an arena within which we can focus on something practical, measurable, tangible, but at the same time work on the underlying, like, pretty much basis of someone's character. So when we're building someone's financial plans, we can't even start it until we look at their life plans, because whatever they want to do with their money has to stem from what they want to do and be as a person. And that's the introduction to the life planning conversation.
Okay, so how much does their personality or their person dictate what their life plan is going to look like? What's that interrelationship like?
Oh, that's a cool question. So you and I chat about personality. We're both pretty keen on this topic. Not everyone is, but I just find it so useful for everyone as well. And our clients who are reticent or uncertain about it, as soon as they've done the model, they always find the use. It's always very useful. Some of them don't love it, but like, cool, I'm glad I know. Others are like, oh man, I want more. So how does it affect their life plan? Look, we say that personality influences everything and dictates nothing. Because personality is a preference. Like, it's kind of, the best example is right or left-handed. You can be right-handed and use your left hand for everything. You probably won't, like, you'll forget every now and then. But if you tried and you really wanted to, yeah, you could. There's nothing stopping you. It's just that you prefer it. So if you zoom out and you watch someone for like 3 weeks, especially when they're subconsciously acting a lot of the time, because most of our lives, man, we're in program mode, right? We're just in the autopilot. We're probably going to play out whatever the preference is. It's kind of a case of probability. So if you're mindful of what your leanings are, your tilts, your biases / preferences, that's what personality is, then you can anticipate what you're most likely to do in any given event. And you can also work with that and go, well, look, I actually also enjoy it when I'm in my preference because it's what I prefer. So if I can build my life plan around my preferences and I know what they are, all the better for me, and probably all the better for the results.
So, okay. So let me pose this question to you. So I am a very different personality to Gabby, my partner, who you've also met, right? I'm a very different personality, but our life is together. So how do you create congruence between two, I mean, essentially, I would say relatively opposed personalities in a certain way, just, you know, I'm more extroverted, she's more introverted, and a whole bunch of characteristics. But how do you define congruence between two different personality types and how that might relate to building a life plan that is going to be fulfilling for everyone involved?
Wow. Okay. So that question can go a few ways. Like, there's people who are in a relationship and they want to work out how to make it work. And then there's those who are kind of on the cusp of the relationship trying to go like, is this the right way to go? Right. So I'm going to answer your question from where you're standing in a relationship. You're committed. You guys are doing this, right?
Yeah. We're keeping this thing going, right? So
Yeah.
I'm not one. Yeah, I'm not questioning. We're good.
Good on you, man. No, that's awesome. Not many people are in that. Well, I shouldn't say that. There's less and less people willing to make that call these days and forthrightly call it, right? I'm proud of you. I'm stoked. That's one of my main personal missions, is to inspire people to do that, and then also help them do it well, just so you know.
Nice.
So how can you do it? So there's two things to bear in mind: that personality differences have both their good and their bad. We've got a metric. We kind of assess what the degree of difference is going to be in two personalities. It's quite a cool thing to do. And you get a score, which is your explosive score. That's kind of like the friction between the two. Obviously, the more explosive, kind of the more challenging. That's one way to put it. The more
interesting.
And then you've also got the synergy score, and they're very correlated. So the higher your explosive score, typically the higher the synergy score. There's a couple of variants to it. So you can have a couple that are very chill with one another. Just sort of like my brother and his partner are a lot like this. It's beautiful to see, man. They're kind of like a really lovely couple. I know a lot of people are jealous of them because they just love each other so much, and they get along so well, and they do so much together. And this synergy is kind of okay. Like they can work well together, but they don't enhance each other's weaknesses very well. They kind of empower each other's weaknesses, and they kind of like play to their strengths a lot. So they're great at some things, and they're kind of just not focused on others.
So it ends up going two extremes, right? So the good bits get gooder,
yeah,
and the bad bits get badder.
You just kind of ignore them because you can kind of that's a nice way to live. If that's what you're looking for, then pick someone who's got that similarity. Obviously, attraction is highly correlated to difference.
Do you think you get to pick, or do you think that love picks you?
I didn't pick. Well, sorry, I shouldn't say that. I decided. I think everyone decides, but do we pick what we're lent towards? No. Like we didn't pick our personalities either. We got preferences. You can tweak your preferences, but they kind of got a bent to them. I think there's another layer though, and I wouldn't forecast this on anyone else, but I really genuinely feel called to my wife. And there's a whole series of like cool, very quirky and cute, divinely inspired events, which I could share stories about, which kind of justify it from my point of view. And it was mutual. I didn't tell her that God told me to marry her, by the way. It was very, in fact, if anything, she said something similar to that before I did, but I had to pursue her for 2.5 years. It was a long slog to get to.
You're on a mission.
Open to it. It was a mission. And without that sense of calling, I wouldn't have pursued the mission. Not at all. Like it was hard. It was fun, but it was hard work, and it's been 10 times, 100 times harder ever since. But I felt called. B, I felt attracted, and then most importantly, C, I decided, and I've decided every day since then to stick with it, and we'll continue to decide that until I die.
Yeah, I think that's a big one. It is a decision. It is a decision. Yeah. To love someone deeply is great, but to make a decision that you are going to commit to them, to be entwined on a soul level is huge. It's awesome.
Because the feedback loop is, I think, where people put their focus. It's like, how am I feeling? Am I in love? Not everyone focuses on this, but a lot of people these days, a lot of media I read focuses on the feedback loop, and you actually can influence that feedback loop a lot. I'm sure you've found that, right? Like there are times where you've lost that kind of zing, and you've made decisions to bring it back, right?
Oh yeah. You like people are insanely in control of the world, and whatever you want in life, or you can create and you can manifest, as you said earlier. You can literally. One of the greatest things I think that anyone could ever learn is that they can literally have whatever they want. They just need to decide what that is.
Wow, that's a powerful idea.
Yeah, it's true though, right? And I would challenge you to disprove it. You can literally have whatever you want in life, as long as the caveat is you just need to decide what that is. And that's, I think, where a lot of people don't get there. They just go, and they just never make that decision. But if you just decide and go, okay, my decision is that I'm going to have this, I'm going to be this, or I'm going to do this, in that moment, that's where the truth starts to unfold.
So I'm curious about your view on this one. Where do you feel the price tag comes in? Because if that was true and you could do it to anything, you just do it all the time and it would happen all the time, right? So obviously there's some level of resistance. So like, how much of a cost does it take to really get what you want in life?
Well, so the thing to that is, it's going to depend on how much you want it, right? So if you really want something, right? So if I really wanted to be a brain surgeon, if that is actually what I really wanted, not just what I sort of wanted, not what I thought would be nice, not what would be kind of cool and maybe get me a good car, but if that is what I truly wanted and I decided to do that, then I would do that, and there would be almost no friction, right? Because that would be where you're going, and that's it. But that's the point, is that I think a lot of people might say, oh, I want to read 50 books this year. It's like, yeah, but I want to sleep in. Yeah, but I want to sleep in a little bit more. But I want to but you just got to decide what you really want. And this is the bit. What do you really want? Like, a lot of people might say, look, I want to go and build a 10 property portfolio, for example. And it's like, do you really want that? Or is that just an idea that you think is good?
Yeah.
And there's a big distinction there, because if whatever you really want, if you make a decision to go and get it, you will get. And I don't think that there's an amount of friction that will stop you from doing that if it is what you really want. And there's a calling piece in there as well. Does that make sense?
Oh, totally. And I'm so glad you shared that. So this is one of the arenas of the work that we do. You asked a bit before about how we build a life plan, or what is it that we do. And that's kind of the first part. It's first creating the awareness of exactly what you shared, that we are powerful beings, able to do way more than we ever imagined. But there's methods and mechanisms that we haven't been tapping into. And most of us are not trained how to do this, right? Very few of us had parents who role modeled this, or mentors who we have pursued to show this. But it's something that you can only really learn by watching someone else do it, or by being inspired to do it yourself. And so the skills that we've been developing are to help someone go on that journey of identifying or unearthing what they do desire, and then helping to, I guess, pull it out so that it's strong enough and they connect with it enough to genuinely then pursue it. Because as you say, once you've got that clarity on what it is, and it is actually what you really want, and you've kind of amplified or enhanced that desire or need or want, then there's no question of you getting it. The sort of like technical thing that we do for clients after that is we help them with the strategy of how to get there, which I think is exactly what you do. And, you know, we're kind of quasi nerds. We're quasi philosophers and psychologists, but we're quasi techie spreadsheet nerds as well, to come up with various strategies.
Correct. Yeah.
We're completely, so more so than you guys, we're ambivalent to the strategy. We can work with any strategy. You know, property is one of the main ones in Australia. I'd say 90% of people that make significant wealth do it in property in Australia or thereabouts. Business is the second most likely. A lot of people don't make wealth in business. They just have a bit of fun and, you know, drain their batteries. But if you want to make a lot of wealth, in theory, business is the most successful way to do it. It's just very few people really pursue it the smartest way. I think property is easier in some regards.
Yeah.
And then finally, the last category is kind of the traders, those who kind of, you know, build portfolios and that sort of thing. But it's a very particular personality of someone who enjoys the analysis. You
mean stock trading?
Stock trading, any sort of trading, really, commodities, whatever. There's a lot of things you can buy and sell. And we see those three as the hands-on strategies and ways to build wealth. There's also the outsourced strategies as well, and there's a plethora of them. You know, your typical app that invests for you, you know, things like Spaceship or Raise, these sort of guys, or just like you set up an account on an exchange platform, ComSec or SelfWealth, and you just create your own, you know, investment portfolio.
So index funds like Vanguard, would that be outsourced?
Typically, look, you can trade a Vanguard fund, you can buy and sell it every day, but no one does that, right?
No, why would you?
You typically trade individual stocks. Well, if you got a strategy, the point with strategy is it doesn't matter what it is as long as it works. And so that's how we approach the financial realm. We focus a lot on that first conversation of who are you and what do you really want in life, and it takes some time to build that picture. And then once we've got it clear, including where they want to be in the future, the milestones, the particular goals in the short term, their value set, which influences their decisions, their beliefs, and all the things we're working on in the meanwhile, then it's like, okay, of the millions of routes that we can take to get to your destination, what's going to be the smartest and the most enjoyable?
Yeah. So with that though, like if there is an infinitesimal amount of potential variations to get one person from where they are now to where they want to be, and you're completely strategically ambivalent, and there are so like it's literally an infinite number of potential tangential aspects. How do you take that from some esoteric intellectual acid trip down to like, hey, here's the straight line and it's from there to there? How do you do that?
It's a great question. And it's not a secret either, because it's really simple once you understand how the process works. It comes down to focusing on the life plan, because in the same sense that people want fulfillment in life. A lot of people go looking for their purpose, hoping that they'll understand their identity better at the end of it, and then maybe they'll feel fulfilled. I think I've noticed that sort of vibe. Whereas it goes the other way around. You don't go looking for purpose at all. You just dig deep into your identity. Find out who you are, what you are. You're a human being. What does it mean that you're a human? How does your emotional system work? How does your psychology work? What are you as a spirit? What are you as a body? How does your muscular system work? What's your personality like? What were your beliefs growing up? How do you interpret the world? What are your worldviews? How do you interpret politics and all these other things? Once you understand all of that, including your values, then your purpose will naturally flow. In the same sense that once you know that this object in front of you is a hammer, what's its purpose? Oh, hitting things. How did you know that? Because I know it's a hammer. Hammers hit things, like knock them in or whatever. If it was a knife, they cut things. So the purpose of that object flows from its identity. And that's the case with everything. And so if we focus too much on the purpose or fulfillment part, or the happiness or the joy, but we don't focus on the only important part of the meal, it's not just the meat in the burger, it's the whole burger, man. Your identity is the beginning and the end. So your desires, your strengths, your inclinations, your experiences, what's available to you, the opportunities, they all flow from your identity, your true identity, right? So once you know that explicitly clear, then you don't need much help from us as an advisor. You do need some help, because what we do is we take the complexity and break it down into macro categories, and you work out which of, like, you can break it down to A/B options. Which of these two do you like? Oh, I like that one. Okay, within that, let's zoom in a bit. Which of these two do you like? Oh, I like that one. Okay, let's zoom in a bit. And you kind of just do that, and you just map it out. There's a lot of education that's required as people jump into new boxes. It's like, whoa, what's this all about? I don't even know what the options mean. Okay, well, this means this, and that means this, and here's an education module. Oh, that was interesting. Okay, well, I like this one. Good, let's do that. Or let's introduce you to someone else who's doing that. Let's find out what parts of it you like the most. Oh, I really like the way that they did that. He's become an entrepreneur, and he did the FIRE, financial independence by 30. I really want to do that. And he did it through business, not through property. I like the 30 thing, but I don't want to do business. Maybe I want to be more of a property guy. Oh, you should speak to Goose. Do you know what I mean? Like you got to, it's kind of a jump between education and then interfacing with reality, mostly through people.
It sounds so fun.
It's so fun, man. It's the best job in the world.
It sounds so fun.
And you're like this, you're a guide who gets the privilege of going on the event. And like growing up, you always used to wish you could work at a theme park because you always would rides. That's how I feel. I feel like I'm at the theme park of my dreams, constantly doing the rides with my clients.
Yeah, I think obviously to a lesser degree, because we do have a strategic angle, right? But I would say that is the piece that I enjoy the most about what we do as well, is going, okay, cool. There are a tremendous variety of different ways you can invest in real estate, and tactics and strategies, and should I renovate for profit, or should I do this, or should I do, and it's like, okay, well, where are you and where are you going? And why are you going there? And is that what you really want? And if that is the case, based on where you're at now, these are some options. And how are we going to do this? Maybe it doesn't make sense to jump straight to a development. Maybe we need to do something a little different, and kind of going on that path and helping people to understand that flow. Because I think that you can ultimately get to wherever you want to go, but it's the flow that you're going to take to get there. I think that's where a lot of people break. And I'm probably sure you've probably seen the same thing, is they'll go, oh, I think that if I want to get from here to here, I need to do this, when actually that piece in the middle is not aligned with maybe where they are. Maybe it's not the right fit for their journey. And at the end of the day, if they try and do that, they'll end up breaking and not getting to the destination at the end anyway, which is very sad.
I agree. And to your credit, I think you picked a great space to do it in because, like, 90% of the time, people use property anyway. So you're hitting the mark for the majority of people. But it's a very versatile space. Like, property is what we live in. I mean, I don't need to sell you why you're doing a good thing, I guess. But I think to your credit, like, the people have tried to do what you're doing in a very myopic category, like share trading. And like, the Saturday seminars you can go to, like the all day free buy a $5,000 upgrade sort of seminar. The guys who do, like options trading or things like that, they probably, a lot of them, not a lot of them, some of them have their value set right and are really trying to do what you and I are doing. And that's their pond. They know that world really well. And if you fit the bill, then you're great for them. Where I see them typically go wrong is they try and oversell it, because I really believe that trading doesn't map to more than 5% of the population. I've tried to make it work various times because I enjoy it. Personally, I do actually trade, and I've floated it with a bunch of clients. And every time we've tasted the waters, it's really clear when it's not for them. I even push it a bit, but then they'll pull back. So I've learned my lessons. But yeah, you're in a pond which is very palatable, and almost everyone is going to be right for the property. It's great, man.
Yeah. It's fun. It's fun. So tell me then. So I really like what you said there. Purpose flows from identity, which made me go, oh my God, hang on a second. Hang on. What is my identity? And is that in line with my purpose? How can people kind of click those two things together, and how can they start to think about that now? If someone was listening to this right now, what kind of questions could they ask themselves to help them understand if they're on the right track, in line with their purpose and their identity? And I've got another question to follow up on that, but I'm going to hit you with that one and see if you can answer that.
Okay, cool. So it depends where they're at in their journey as to how they tackle that question. But I'm going to break it down to two different scenarios. There's a bunch of people who aren't so clear on their identity because their personality preference has been very much about the rest of the world. They're always focused on what we call the tribe. So if you had to delineate between tribe or self, we have to care about both. If you just only focus on the rest of the world, you don't feed yourself when you die. If you only care about yourself, then you end up getting hit in the head by someone that hates you and you die as well. So you got to be able to play both games, but we're always biased towards one or the other. And there are some people, you might know them in your life, who only focus on the tribe to their own detriment.
Yep.
They're the ones who struggle with this the most because they don't have a strong sense of their identity. They neglect the conversation, and when it comes up, it kind of irks them. It's an uncomfortable time. They have a lot of, we all have insecurities, but they have a lot of insecurities they haven't even unpacked. They don't process. They typically don't process their own internal junk, whether emotions or logic, very well. And so they definitely need help, kind of like a bit of TLC to guide them through that conversation. Just for lack of exposure, even in their 30s. Like, you'd think by 30 you would have thought this stuff through a bit, but some people haven't.
I mean, I think you get people who are in their 60s and 70s have never even thought about this, right? Like how many people do you think actually go through this process of actually trying to work out are they even on the right track? Because I'm plucking a made up statistic, but like, seems like 90% or more of people in life are just bumbling along, letting life happen to them rather than deciding what they want out of it.
Yeah. It's a sliding scale, but I agree with you. You got to put a line somewhere. To that point, I've sadly chosen not to focus on the older demographic. I used to work with them as an official financial advisor, and I used to try and dip these conversations into the mix, to very limited success, man. And that's a credit to my inexperience at the time. And I didn't grow up with my grandparents. I'd never really connected deeply with the older generation, even though my parents are quite old. I feel like I'm getting that level of understanding and empathy now, but very slowly. I have very little confidence to help a 65-year-old find their purpose compared to a 30-year-old. And there's a lot of reasons for that. But eventually I want to be at that point where I feel that same confidence. I know that any 30-year-old comes to me who's looking for their purpose, I can partner with them or find it within a very short period of time. And I want to build that confidence for an older person.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Because you've then got to apply based on your personality and your purpose where you can have the most impact as well.
Yeah, and that's part of what I'm saying. The other part is I think there's a lot more baggage and a lot more like just generational mindsets to deal with.
Yep.
It's much harder work. So back to the original question, for someone who doesn't have that clarity on their identity, hopefully you're not 65. Otherwise, don't come listening to me. There's other people to listen to. If you're 30 or 40 or 45 or even 50, then look, there's a couple of cool things you can do. Do you want practicals?
Yeah, man. Give us some takeaways.
Okay, cool. So in terms of like done for you online programs and stuff, there's a really great one done by a gentleman called Jordan Peterson. I'm guessing you would have come across that man before.
Yeah.
He's a great philosopher, thinker, and psychologist. Very focused on helping you work out who you are and what to do in life. It's all about sort of life guidance. And he's created an online writing tool, pretty much, called the Future Authoring Suite. Or the Future Authoring Program. It costs like $20. It's kind of like you pay and then you just answer all these questions, but it forces you to think about what's the life you would love to live, and then also what's the life that you would hate to live. Like, what's the worst you can imagine your life getting based off your biases and your habits and your faults and those sorts of things. And you've got to build both those pictures, both of which are very useful. I don't think you focus just on one. You're going to do both. You also identify what your goals are, where you're at, you reflect on yourself. It's really creating a space for you to do some of that introspection, which you might not have done, or you might not have enjoyed, or you've never even tried before. And that's just a simple online DIY. We've got a couple of tools which we're still building. Like, we use tools with our clients that we're interacting with. We've got nothing that's done for you. The alternative is to sit down with someone like us, or a life coach or a mentor, and say, hey, I want to understand what makes me tick. Personality models are a really great way to start. So we use a model called objective personality, but a lot of the personality models will help. That's one key thing. Seeing a psychologist, just whether you think you messed up or not, doesn't matter. Go see them. Engage yourself in a series of 10 sessions. Maybe your EAP program at work will offer you one for free. A lot of people don't know that they got a free EAP program, right?
Yeah, totally. And just on that as well, I think that's a really interesting point, because a lot of people have got a stigma about going to a psych. Yeah, a shrink, right? But they'll pay a lot of attention to their physical health. Right? Maybe they'll go to the gym 5 days a week, or maybe not. Maybe just might go for a walk once a week, whatever the case may be. But they'll be very cognizant of that. They'll be because you can kind of see, like, if you're getting a little round in the middle, and you'd be like, oh, okay. But no one pays the same amount of attention to the mental health and the intellectual health. And so a lot of people will go and get a personal trainer. Now, if you ask someone when was the last time you exercised, it's probably going to say, even if they don't exercise much, they'll probably be, say, within the last week, right?
Yeah, of course.
If you said and that's for physical exercise. When was the last time you went and got when was the last time you went to the doctor and got a checkup? When was the last time you went and focused on your mental health and thought about it from that perspective, from the same physiological dynamic? And a lot of people don't. I think it's fantastic. I periodically, and it's not something I do regularly, but it's like periodically, every few years, I'll be like, hang on a second. I haven't done any checkups in there for a little while. What's going on? And then go and have a little dig. But anyway, we can get going.
It's good that you mention it and not Gabby. It means you're ahead of the game. You don't want to be coming from that side, right?
No, yeah, totally.
Look, it's invaluable. And the reason it's invaluable is because I mentioned programming before, right? I don't know if you see it the same way, but we run very much on programs. Like I said, we're mostly on our autopilot. When we're not, I don't think we're in a program. I believe there's a part of us that does have free will and ability to decide, and that's a complex space of consciousness. But maybe 90% of the time, we keep using this statistic. Let's just run with 90%, right? Every stat is 90%.
Every stat is 90%.
So 90% of the time, we're just on autopilot. So it matters what the programming is. And the scary thing is, when people recognize this, we didn't decide the programming. Our upbringing, our constructed environment decided. Mostly our parents, primarily our role models. But then there's a crossing point where somewhere between 12 and 22, we go from being almost completely out of control of our programming to almost fully in control of our programming. And so this is the annoying part, that we all start with a random assortment of programming. And that's where we feel it's unfair. I didn't choose to be like, maybe angry every time someone does this, or respond to this in that way, but we do choose if we change that or not. Like you kind of referred to this before, we got a lot of control over our world, but to do that you have to first understand what's happened, what's the current programming. It's kind of like a fact find. What's going on? What's the current state? Okay, how do we then reprogram the mind? It's not an impossible thing to do, but it is a difficult thing to do. And a psychologist is kind of like a professional that does that. They help you reprogram your mind.
I would throw another little thing into the mix there. Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz.
Oh, I'm not familiar with that.
Oh, that's basically the foundational book. Anyone who's listening to this, I highly, highly recommend it. It was kind of the foundational book that explored the idea between the psyche being the operating system, the programmatic operating system for the cybernetic body self, the mechanical body, and how by changing your programming you can literally change your entire world, right? So it was the foundational work for that kind of sparked people like Jim Rohn and Tony Robbins and all of that kind of stuff. It's really about mastering your mind and mental imagery and changing your operating system and changing your world. And it's hugely impactful. It's not some wishy-washy motivational book. It's written by a professor. It's very like studious, but it is also immensely important work. So yeah, I reckon check it out. So I think it's kind of
sounds like a great place to start as well, because a lot of people who either get intimidated by the mind or who just aren't that interested find that they get really into physical things that influence the mind. You know, like these sort of gimmicks where when you're feeling sad, you tilt your head up and put your eyes up higher in your eye sockets and try and feel as sad as you were. And it literally shifts things, you know. There's a lot of stuff like that. Even just shifting your shoulders back and standing more upright, it naturally makes you feel more confident. And like you can read the research of why that is biologically, or you can just do it and go, oh, that's awesome. Like there's a reason why Tony Robbins spends 4 hours out of his 12-hour days pretty much jumping up and down on the spot before he then talks. Right? Because it works. He's a guru at finding things that are effective. Like him or hate him, he's a genius and he finds stuff that works and he does it. So yeah, like our physiology is so linked with the brain. Yeah.
Totally. So, mate, I'm mindful of time and I want to ask you something. I know we've covered a lot and there's probably a few unanswered questions in amongst all this as well.
Is there any red threads in everything we've said?
Mate, it's good. It's good. We've gone well. I think it's going to be super impactful. But I want to know from your perspective, what are the core drivers of, I mean, I was going to say the spirit or purpose or whatever, but the core drivers of the human journey.
Oh, what a beautiful question. So I see three things. And obviously these three things are all infinitely deep, but I would say love, truth, and beauty are the things that we need, crave, and exist within. So we desire love on the spectrum of sameness. That's the connection you're talking about, the oneness. And love is important, love exists because of the difference. So truth is all about this is what this is and this is what that is. And these two things have some dissonance between them. Like you don't need truth. Everything is the same, right? Things just are. So truth helps to identify the difference. Love then helps to bridge that gap and to bring a connection between the difference. And that's why I see them as two sides of the same coin. So, for example, some people very much focus on what things are, and that's not right, and get very argumentative. They need a little bit more truth, love in their life to be able to go, you know what, whether it's right or wrong, I want to help connect with your heart right now. And in our marriages, that's probably, from my point of view, that's the one thing I can work on a bit more, to be honest. And on the flip side, those who are very naturally focused on the connection and they'll disregard reality and ignore things or kind of neglect the value of things, they need to put a bit more importance on the truth side. But even if you're focusing on the two, I think there's another facet which only in the past few years have I realized it. It's almost similar to love, beauty, but beauty speaks to the wonder of the world. You know, particularly when you've had just a rough day, but you managed to get out to a beautiful headland or a spot. We live in the northern beaches of Sydney, so it's an incredible place for doing this sort of thing, especially in winter. You get these immaculate sunsets. And you watch something just with your eyes, so your eyes take in a display. And it's not just a picture. It's not like anything else you see in that day. It does something to your whole spirit, to your body. And then it sticks with you, this sense of wonder, something greater. And I think that leads to a connection with the divine, for sure. But beauty is more than that. Beauty also helps us to, I guess, feel inspired to grow and to improve. Because as soon as you're on a dirty street, right? As soon as you do up one of the houses, I'm interested if you've seen this. Everyone on that street now sees this one beautiful house compared to everything else. They'll either trash it down and make it just as junk as everything else, or they will start mowing their lawn. You can't just constantly see this beauty and then see the comparison, which beauty makes other things look ugly, right?
Well, beauty only exists in contrast.
Right. Well, that's a really good point. It's a really, really solid point. And which speaks to the difference. And it's nice because it does both the sameness and the difference. And I think a lot about that, those two spectrums, that everything in life pulls itself together through sameness and difference. My good mate is a believer that everything is the same and there's no difference. And I get that. I like that perspective sometimes, but I think you only get the full weight of things when you can do both. And that's why when you look at your preferences and your personalities, you can't just lean on one side. You can't just play to your strength or your preference. You have to be able to play the both. Mm-hmm. You know, the tribe and the self, being able to feel and to think, being able to focus on all the details, but also pull together all the connections and all the patterns throughout them. You know what I mean?
I do actually. I really do. And but I've really enjoyed this conversation, and we've definitely covered some really solid ground, I think.
Or maybe really ethereal ground, maybe not so solid.
I think that the people listening to this podcast have a tendency to resonate with much higher level thinking, and I think this is really going to help bring something to the conversation that happens around a lot of this stuff, as you know, around money and real estate. And it's often quite dry. It's quite dry, structured, and stiff kind of narratives around that. And I think that there's an important place, not just a place, but an extremely important place to be having conversations like this around it, so that people can have a greater connectivity to what they're even doing and why.
Wow, that's a great point. Yeah, and can I share a message on that fact?
You can.
So for anyone listening to this who resonates with this type of conversation and perhaps doesn't feel that it's landed in their life yet, you know, we've said it, like both Goose and myself have shared a couple of practicals of what you can do. But the most important thing you can do is create a space in your life to have these sorts of conversations. Sometimes it just has to be with yourself, but for most of us, it's always better to do it with someone else. And I don't know if mentoring is a big part of the way you guys do business. Do you guys have mentoring relationships with your clients, or do you inspire?
Some. We have some advisory clients and we do obviously mentor people through the buying process and help them make the right decisions and stuff like that, as opposed to being a purchasing service. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, like that's fresh. We need more of that in our services in the world. But the art of mentoring is largely lost outside of the career environment. But this is an area of life that you can spend a decade scrambling your way through the murky depths of who you are, or you can identify the right mentors and just fast track it, really, without skipping a beat. In fact, you get a better outcome by choosing the best mentors. And so, you know, I'm available as someone to chat with, and if you resonate with me, feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to have a chat. You know, we got a really great free onboarding process. But whether it's with myself or with Goose or someone else you know or respect, it could be an uncle, it could be just someone that you see in your life that what you really want to look for is who's got the fruit, who's exemplifying the life that, you know, when I saw myself at age 17, I had this picture in my mind, right? What I thought I wanted to see. It was a bit vague, but it was enough of a picture to be able to start identifying who looked like they were doing something similar. And I found a few, and I've been pursuing them for the last 15 years. More and more and more as the visions got clearer. And I know that any year I don't focus on mentors is a year I slow down, a year I have less to offer. And because I now charge clients money to be in a mentoring relationship, not always, some of my mentoring relationships are free, but for a lot of the time when I charge for it, if I'm not constantly being input into and growing as a person, then that relationship's going to have a use by date on it. And I want to always be growing. If not for my clients, then most importantly, I've got a little one. I've got a 20-month-old daughter who's amazing. And I know she's going to be incredible. I've got like 31 years on her, but if I don't play my cards right, in 20 years' time, she might outdo me. You know, she might excel right past. So I got to keep up my game. And the only way I can do that is by investing into the right mentoring relationships.
100% agree. I'm constantly building a tribe of mentors. And the way I think about mentors is, no one person will exemplify all of the character traits that you want, right? So there's an exercise. In fact, I'm going to be doing it today. It's called Owning the Traits of the Greats, where you can actually extract the traits that you want out of. It's a fascinating exercise to do.
I'm curious.
Yeah, it's pretty a little deep for where we're at right now. But in any case, you can find someone that you might say, I really like how fit that person is, or maybe they're good at sport. Maybe they're good at sport, right? And you may go, I want to be like that at their sporting ability, but you might not want to be like them in their relationship ability or their financial management or anything like that. So really looking at where those areas are that you want to grow, and then finding people who for that piece, and rather than heroing someone going, hey, for example, maybe it's a business mentor. Like, I like the way you do business and I want that business part, and I don't really care about your whether you go to the gym at 5 a.m, right? I want that piece. But I'm constantly building a tribe of mentors. I think it's the best way to fast track where you're going and to give you bumper rails, right? Really, really, something I can speak for myself. I want to race ahead in life, and I want to achieve a lot, and I want to do all this stuff. And I'd really rather have someone have some bumper rails around me where I can be like, guys, am I doing this right? and then they can help me stay on track. And I think it's super important. So on that note, and before we wrap up, if someone does want to reach out to you and they want to explore getting a whole life plan or some financial advice or some mentoring or anything like that, how would they do that?
Oh, cool. Thanks for asking. So myself and my business partner, Harry, we work very closely together. You're welcome to reach out to either me, Tristan Scifo, or Harry Goldberg. Our website's www.purposeadvisory.com.au, or you just Google us, obviously. It's very easy to find us, but if you want to actually reach out, all you need to do is book a free intro call. The process is 20-minute intro call. We work out where you're at, what you want. Then another free session, but this one's a 2-hour in-depth dive into your world. We do a very thorough sort of exploration of where things are working and where things are not. All the things you wanted to talk about, and then all the things you didn't want to talk about, we'll go there. We'll identify a concise version of your life plan, and then we'll work out what your current wealth plan is and what you want to be doing. And then, in case you didn't have enough, we'll do a little follow-up just to check in, make sure that of all the services that we've shared with you, that at least one of them resonates. And only in that meeting are you able to sign up. You can't sign up before that point, so you have to make it through the journey. And if you're not right for us, there's no obligado. What we'll do is refer you on to the right next person. I never want to see you high and dry. We'll either give you a homework task and say, get back in touch in 3, 6, 12 months. We'll sign you up to something that we're going to help you with, then we'll guide you through that, or we'll refer you to someone else that's going to help you out. So if you come into our hands, you'll never be left empty-handed, and you'll never be left without direction.
That's good custodianship. I like that. So, mate, I've really enjoyed this conversation. I reckon we will. I'll drop a link to Purpose Advisory in the show notes, so people can just hit that. So if you're listening to this, check the show notes. You can check out Purpose Advisory. I would say that we may need to do another one of these episodes in the future, because there's so many other questions that I would love to bounce around with you, and that I think would be impactful for people. But for now, thanks so much for this scintillating conversation, and thanks for being part of the show.
My pleasure, Goose. What a fun time. Have a lovely day.